We're live
We're live.
and we've got people popping in.
Hello, people.
So, hello, people. Thanks for joining us. So, Sasha, I have chartered you to be the interrogator of note, at least to get us started. So, I don't know if you had any challenge questions or reactions to me. I'm also happy to share the little history of how we even ended up inspired to schedule this Substack Live. But if you wanted to just dive in with a question.
Yeah, I think my sense of what happened was that before we talked last time, your feeling was that we had this big disagreement about the nature of the self and what one ought to do with one's personality. And then we had a conversation and we largely failed to have
To
substantial
disagree
disagreement.
properly. Yep. Ah.
It
Epic fail.
made the conversation perhaps less exciting than you had wanted. And
I mean, I enjoyed it plenty. but we yes. Yeah, go on.
I think that may happen again. I'm
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 ready for
honestly
it.
not sure what I'm supposed to challenge you on.
I mean, it may well be a cordial shared exploration of the psychology of, personality and self. But I feel like if we really try, if we really lean in, we can at least find some conceptual differences in emphasis, perhaps, if nothing else, in terms of our aspirational. Let me see if I can try to put it in deliberately confrontational way. I mean, it's not going to be confrontational, but like the aspirational outcome toward which we ought to strive, whether it's in the context of when we, do meditation practice or just when we live our lives, what is the good toward which we ought to strive, and how do our different conceptions of self and well-being and integration, alignment, happiness, what have you, how do they map on to that vision?
Yeah, my sense is that to make things more confrontational,
Please.
and
Help I can get.
edit this if it's wrong, but my sense is that you have a general feeling that I have this bullshit West Coast, Northern California vibe of just relax and drop your expectations, and that this is anathema to the general message or vibe of your coaching and your writing, which is more about finding one's excellence and stretching your capacity.
Yeah. Yes, with the caveat that I actually, part of the reason I like and vibe with your writing is because I don't consistently see you embodying the chill, expectation dropping persona or approach.
Right.
And I do some of the things that you write about, especially when you describe your transformational experiences, strike me as committing you to that. But clearly they don't, but I don't really understand why. Maybe, yeah, we can start there.
I get it. And my secret is that I'm an ambitious, tactical tryhard. Like,
What did you say? Ambitious or
it's not
unambitious?
really a secret. It's obvious from the amount of output and the overall trajectory of my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, you said ambitious, right? Versus unambitious. Yeah. So, but how do you reconcile that with no longer having a will, for example? You just try to get straight into the heart of the controversy.
The controversy, which is to say your most immediate problem with me as a person.
Wow. Okay. Well, really... Sure. Thanks. Yeah, that sounds way more confrontational than anything I'm capable of. Let's go with that.
Okay. To disambiguate that as much as possible. A lot of people who meditate a lot, for thousands of hours, have a finding that pops up over and over again. And the finding is that there is a sense of separation between you and me, or between the self and consciousness more broadly, and a sense of individual agency coming from a little controlling point in the head. And that if you meditate a lot, the finding is that that sense is built on layers and layers of refusal, of avoidance. I would rather not be feeling this. I would rather not be thinking this. I would rather not be being this way. And if you relax that refusal more and more and more, you get closer to something like a bare metal experience of consciousness. And people who get there tend to report that the will starts to feel more like a system or a natural emergence than a video game controller, right?
Hmm. But
in
can
my
I
case,
ask,
yeah,
to whom? Like when you say it starts to feel that way, to whom does it start to feel? Like, is there a subjective I, or, is there a sense of like, I am having an experience. The experience is much more an experience of this more emergent and dynamical system rather than some rigid, fixed, point in time
right,
and version of me. But
yeah.
yeah, is there still an I and or me there?
I mean, one way to throw this question back at you is to ask, like, if you're in a deep flow state or in a moment of deep intimacy with a person, in what sense do and don't you have an I in those moments?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
So I'm not self-conscious in those moments, is the way I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
I am highly conscious, intensely conscious of an object and the value of that object to me. And there's a sense of very specific personal connection to that. So if I'm with my kids or my husband, or if I'm in a coaching session that's really flowing, right, there's a deep sense of values alignment, and that something important that I care about is happening. And if you asked me to describe it, I'm sure, it wouldn't be, my description wouldn't be peppered with I pronouns. It would be peppered with, and then this happened, and then they had this revelation, and then these things clicked and connected. But all of it, I'm the narrator, in the sense that I'm organizing those events according to what they mean to me, and I'm highlighting the aspects that are like kind of causally relevant to the overarching plot, of which I am ultimately still the protagonist, or one of the protagonists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, how different is that?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's in the same direction, in that there's like less of a sense of self-conscious commentary and mediation through an identity, and more of a focus on the immediate experience and openness to immediate experience. And there's still some tracking the plot, tracking the character going on. But that's enough. That's
Let me
fine.
see if I can try and, how do I just pick up on
1, 2, 3.
your audio's on? Okay, but how is it being routed? Does this sound? Can you hear me first of all?
You sound great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but I think you're still coming through my AirPods, don't you figure? Okay, let's hide them away so that they're no longer a temptation. Okay. There. How about now?
Everything still seems fine.
Great. And now I hear you too.
Great.
So
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, so it sounds like we can arrange experience along a spectrum, graded on how much of a focus on sensations pertaining to identity and separation from experience there is, right? And we could put like default human state, a state of flow, on a spectrum. And I would say the state that you end up living in a lot of the time after you've done a lot of meditation is just a little further beyond that, but it's the same direction of like away from self-censoring, monitoring, managing, while still having the faculties available.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is whether there might just be a false dichotomy here, because the spectrum you're describing implies there's either this kind of neurotic self that's analyzing its own like worthiness or appearance or whatever it is that it's analyzing.
Yeah.
And then there's just the world as it is and is constantly ebbing and flowing, and we're passive observers of it.
Yeah.
And we can be somewhere on that continuum, whereas I see my aspirational state and my optimal state as being an extremely active participation in the world, but where it's a two-way street. Like I am interacting with the world. I am in the world. The world is my object of agency. I'm acting upon it, and it's also, serving my needs, and it's offering me a lot of value. But like it doesn't feel like this passive, or at least passive sounding to me, observingness. It's it's very much also a doingness.
Yeah, and it's also a mode of deep relating, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is, like, for me, the project of therapy and coaching, because therapy and coaching to me there's not a hard boundary between them, right? Coaching just tends to be the kind of therapy you do with people who are at a high enough level of functioning that they can take advice and run experiments, right? So like therapy, coaching, and deconstructive meditation to me have the same long-term project in mind, which is just like removing compulsive defenses. Now there's one project that I think the kind of coaching you do also has, which some meditation has, some doesn't, which is also installing an ideal, right? So in like Mahayana Buddhism, people set themselves an unreasonable goal that's intended to provide lifelong motivation, which is how do you dedicate yourself to the liberation of all beings, like literally all beings, right?
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah.
But like that's a fun boulder to push up the hill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think something, depending on what your views of capitalism are, you could.
No, we could get into that if we really want to get contentious.
If we really want to get into it, like you could say that the establishment of the ideal of like being the creator of a really durable institution is similar, in the sense that a well-run company, profit or non-profit, a well-run enterprise creates, so much value and livelihoods for so many people, and so removing defenses and installing aspirations seem like
interesting.
But
is this a different strain of Buddhism than the like nirvana enlightenment strain?
Yeah. So I mean, the thing about Buddhism is even more than Christianity, it is diverse. The most popular form of Buddhism in the world by the numbers is a form that's just reinvented Christianity.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's called Pure Land Buddhism. It's about like admitting that you're personally helpless, and that if a Buddha might reincarnate you in the pure land where you can achieve enlightenment, because this world is too fallen and you're too stupid.
That sounds pretty Christian.
Yeah. Right. Early Buddhism is a lot about life is pain, let me escape it. As Buddhism ages, it tends to get more world-related and world-involved. I wouldn't even call myself a Buddhist, by the way. I'm just like, Buddhists are very technical about meditation, and that's been helpful to me. But yeah, if I were a Buddhist, it would be one of the more world-facing flavors.
Cool. Interesting. You keep eliminating all hope of disagreement. Stop it. No, but okay, so here's a question.
What do you disagree about?
And I'm sure we're going to find something. So here's a question. In the piece where you describe one of the major transformations, I think it was the one that thrust you into adolescence, or what? I mean, that might be for multiple of them, but the one where you were in LA, if you happen to remember, and you like LA,
memorable experience of my life.
If you happen to recall, yes, there's this incidental moment. Yeah. So you mentioned, like you love LA, but in this particular instance, you didn't even feel tempted to go out and explore the city because like everything had just had the glow of eternal perfection to it. I'm not describing it accurately. And it was also...
That's a great description.
Is that okay? Good. I'm glad my memory serves because it was a very powerful description. Anyway, and you also mentioned in that article the part of the impetus, like the trigger for kind of needing to seek this kind of guidance in that particular moment was feeling kind of lonely and alienated in SF, even though like you're there because it makes sense, particularly with Kate's career, et cetera, et cetera. And part of what struck me about that is, okay, so if I were coaching someone in this circumstance, like we would have a lot to talk about in terms of why are you in SF? And is this actually is this an informed choice about how you want it? And it sounds like it is for you, to be clear. Like you actually, like on hold, the value outweighs the cost. And this is a version of your life that you want to build and have signed on to building. But, if it's the first time I'm meeting someone and they tell me that part of the story, I wouldn't assume that out of hand. And the hard work for me would be in really figuring out, like, what what do you want out of your life? And what is the configuration that actually, even if it requires some hard choices, or facing parts of yourself that maybe you've been avoiding or less proud of, or figuring out how your values actually can
Right.
fit together, or which ones you have to let go of.
So if I-
But
if I
like,
can get the
that's
play
the
back
really
right.
hard.
If I can get
Mhm.
the back right, it's like if you were talking to somebody who was uncomfortable in their city and their social graph,
Yeah.
one of the things you'd want to establish in a therapeutic relationship is there value in them accepting this, or is the acceptance just a refusal to face the facts and it's paralyzing them? And there are all sorts of actions they could take to remedy this situation,
Yes.
but they're not just surrendering to it.
Yeah. But beyond that, there's also, it's not just a binary, like, let's figure out if it's this thing or this thing. It's like there's a lot of work to do there. There's cognitive work, there's emotional work, and figuring out, like, in in picturing versions of your life and really thinking through the contingencies of, like, what would I need to do? What would the next year look like? What would the next 5 years look like if I went down this path versus this one? And are there third paths I'm not even thinking of that let me have it all? And like, how else could like, as a design problem, and the kind of thing that, and like Kate also writes beautifully about in terms of being high agency, like, are we really considering the full range of affordances that we have here? Like, all of that gets scope.
Yeah, that's right. I think this is a very situational question, um, because I can totally see the right advice for some people to be like, leave your city or have a long distance relationship for a period of time, or make a whole bunch of new friends or something. I think like the events writing about in that piece, most of the people you coach, I would assume, if they're like first time founders, are in their 20s, right?
Varies, but that's
Yeah.
probably the distribution is skewed in
Yeah.
that way.
I was
Yeah.
writing about, so the events I was writing about took place when I was like 35.
Mm.
And I think haven't had enough life experience to sense that.
Mm.
What I was really reckoning with was part of my basic orientation towards reality.
Mm.
I think part of the beauty of committed long-term relationships, specifically in my mind, monogamous relationships, is that it's a really great arena for independent people to learn to make peace with dependency and vice versa. And I think what had really happened in retrospect is I had come to a point where um, committing to my relationship and the city it occurs in meant facing my dependent side, the possibility for independence. And so I had this consistent flinching against just tending to my own needs and solitude and being alone. And really addressing those needs on a categorical level was deeply liberating to me. But it's possible that my life would be a lot richer if earlier in my life I'd said, it's just my job to resolve all of my own needs, and I should just change myself and not the situation. So
Mm.
I don't have a categorical answer for how people should live, or
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, even if I do, that's not either what I lead with in coaching, because I don't think me imposing my vision,
yeah,
would be that helpful anyway.
yeah.
Or be what I want to impose here. It's more so the meta question of, like, you've got to work through all of that, right? Like, even just deciding, okay, which of these approaches should I take the approach of trying to really resolve my own needs and do the inner work, or should I just, like, accept the environment, or should I try to change the environment? Like, those are questions to grapple with, or else they just get made, those choices just get made for you by default. Right. And so I guess I'm wondering, in your case, like, that's an example where you'd maybe already done all of that processing, as you said, you'd already kind of figured these things out. And so now it's just like this one further unlock where you realize that you don't need to cling so tightly to your emotional states or to your will. But I guess to me, that doesn't necessarily seem like a harder or more downstream thing than grappling with the full complexity of how you want to approach your life and what matters to you and how much your needs should matter and how much the rest of the world should matter. Like, those seem like the hard questions. And that seems like the substantive work that for a lot of people, like, there's not going to be an unlock that doesn't involve a lot of that existential grappling, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, I guess maybe now I'm getting more of a sense of like what your problem is with some of it, which is like, and I think it's a legitimate objection, which is something like Sasha has done a lot of internal wrangling with his experience, and he's come up with like a set of answers for himself that he articulates persuasively. But somebody could come along who hasn't done as much internal wrangling and adopts some sort of meditative surrender as a rote response to their life when in fact an alternate response would be much more productive. Is that
I think that's ballpark. Yeah, it's getting into the ballpark. Yeah, I mean, I guess yes. I guess I think there's also the emphasis on the meditation work and on that, like, implies a kind of like prioritization. Like, this is the really important stuff, or like, this is what's keeping you stuck. If you could get this, like, figured out, the rest would be easy. Or like the rest wouldn't matter that much. Because again, I do think people at least easily can read in that flavor of non-striving, letting go of expectations and so on.
Right. No, and in fact, like, I would say that for most people, some people are weird exceptions to this, but for most people, like, I think building up a healthy ego through pretty normal self-improvement and then seeing if you can just deconstruct it when the limits of that ego present themselves is the likelier path through like self-development. Like I really get irritated when so I both like love and am annoyed by the work of this executive coach Joe Hudson, who you might be familiar with.
Oh yes, and our Art of Accomplishment guy.
Yeah. And Joe's work is like really amazing in some ways, and I think his work is very positive some. And he goes around telling people that if you just feel all of your feelings, that is all of your suffering will untangle itself.
Yeah,
and that is very true. It seems to me of highly accomplished, self-critical, overachieving types, and
like a very specific subtype of person who's like got the rest of it actually figured out and just needs to let go of this, and has like a very pretty specific pathology. This is actually what led us to this call. Was I had posted about my frustration with all of the Silicon Valley therapies as they get metabolized in Silicon Valley, at least, which sort of like assume that not feeling your feelings is the core of all psychological problems, and as long as you can just learn to feel your feelings and regulate your nervous system,
and as a PhD in psychology, you know that this is absolutely not true.
Like, I mean, it's
a load
absurd.
Not only
what if your feelings? Anyway, I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole, but yeah.
Well, not only that, but if you look at the modern psychoanalytic literature, you find that there's a couple of types in particular, histrionic personality style and borderline personality style, borderline dysregulated personality style, which refers to a style of personality more than a level of functioning. Like people can have that personality style and be pretty high functioning.
Multiple levels of function, that's true.
For people of that personality style, the current industry leading therapy is mentalization-based treatment. The whole method of treatment is stop having so many feelings and start
literally or like learn how to distance from and get alternate perspectives to whatever the default feelings that happen to be activated. Yeah, no kidding. And dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, which I would say is the other like frontline treatment for that general type, which also very, like the 4 modules include emotion regulation, which is all about how to change your emotions. Right. Distress tolerance, which is about how to feel your feelings. So there is a module for it. One module, mindfulness, how to generally be aware, and then interpersonal effectiveness, just how to relate to other people more effectively. But yeah, I mean, that's, 3/4 of the battle are not, if anything, involve managing, regulating, and getting outside of your feelings rather than just getting swept away in them.
Yeah, no, I think like Silicon Valley specifically has an overabundance of 2 pretty rare personality styles, right? There's what we might call the narcissistic personality style, which again, in the therapeutic context, isn't necessarily narcissism isn't a bad word. It just means like I'm special. I have an image of myself as special.
Yeah.
And I'm going to work to maintain that image. And if you actually are an unusual person and you're working on maintaining that image, it's not necessarily unhealthy, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I have my own issues with that taxonomy and with narcissism as either overly pathologized or depathologized by attempting to package together like the really pathological thing that properly should be named narcissism, and in effect high conviction, high confidence, high agency leaders. I hate that. So, but that's a whole separate. We can,
right.
So that's
Okay,
because you're
let's say that Silicon Valley has an overabundance of healthy narcissistic styles and what we might call obsessive compulsive styles, which is to say, people have a cerebral approach to emotion, right? Sure. To that specific group of people, which again is an unusual slice, just feel your feelings a lot. It's probably really good fucking advice.
Yeah. Like
it's not a bad first pass. Like general advice is hard to give. And for that slice, it's decent advice to try.
Yeah, it's like it's going to have a higher hit rate in terms of finding its target, right, among this very weird, population.
Yeah.
I would argue for that sample, for that slice of the population too, it will hit its target in the sense that it will address one specific dimension of their broader pathology.
Yeah.
I don't think that it addresses the whole pathology, which is why I encounter this regularly with clients who tell me about the IFS they did or the whatever. And in certain ways, it helped them. In other ways, it actually entrenched them in patterns that they were already either grappling with or didn't or never really resolved. But now they have this set of archetypes or this kind of relationship to this particular part of themselves that doesn't even need to be there, but now it's been reified in their minds as just this like an inevitable part that is just going to constantly show up and need dialoguing with for hours. So,
yeah,
I mean, I could go on.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. Like, I mean, giving general advice to everybody is hard. There's no like maxim or set of directives that's going to make all of life make sense.
Right.
And
well, yeah, at least not.
It's like people who are coaching people in Silicon Valley or even like in California are
basically
well to note that they're talking to a bunch of really unusual people for whom no, I mean like just feel your feelings and everything's going to work out, or just stop resisting your emotions and everything's going to work out as blanket advice is like pretty disastrous, I think.
Right. Yeah. The reason that this came up was that you had a really helpful answer to my frustration and my question, like, what is up with all of the Silicon Valley therapies, at least as they get digested by founders that I talk to and by everybody or everyone who posts about them on tech.
Because sorry, you can unpack that more, but I think like I'm starting to get curious about your experience, because is your experience that you run into lots of founders who absorbed, let's say, a bunch of IFS stuff, the Art of Accomplishment podcast, a bunch of stuff about Alexander technique or whatever, and they're just like, I just need to relax, and then that doesn't work.
And meditation, plenty of meditation too. They've gone on retreats. They've done, many of them follow your work. I do have to say, cool. Among all this other stuff. But yes,
and they're like, I followed Sasha's advice. Why isn't my life working out the way it should?
Yeah, or like it was working for a while.
Yeah.
And then we ran out of money, or and then like we went from growing exponentially to stalling, and then a bunch of churn happened, or I sold my company, and now suddenly I'm like back in existential angst, and now I thought like this would be so good for me because I would take a break from work and I would find myself and I would go take a sabbatical, or and now I feel emptier than ever before, and I miss the days when I would just like work all the time, and I'm not supposed to, but no. Well, that was just like, no, grinding, that's overrated. But like, who am I without the work? And why can't I just accept it, in effect? Yeah. Like, why am I out of alignment?
Yeah. Interesting.
But I guess that's not necessarily the part that sort of frustrates. The part that frustrates me is when the idea of getting into the content, like the idea of, okay, well, let's actually like, let's explore what you've enjoyed about the best work that you've done and what you haven't enjoyed about the other, like, let's actually understand substantively, like, what do you find meaningful and what do you actually want and what do you not want? Is this relationship working for you? Where there's this kind of like artificial pushback that I get from people who have been steeped in a certain kind of like therapeutic, the mix of schools we were just talking about.
Yeah.
That's like, what? That stuff's not real. That's not what we should be talking about.
Oh, like intellectual content, stories.
Yeah, like if it has content,
unreal, right?
Like anything that has content, anything you can put into words is like therefore unreal or shallow or not really there's this assumption that I've picked up that like thinking just is bullshitting. It just is rationalizing. It just is avoidance.
Oh yeah,
and like
I hate that point of view.
yeah,
I
I figured you probably did, but yeah, but I wonder what that.
To recap the discussion that started this, like my feeling about IFS and emotional work and stuff, which is miraculous for a bunch of people I know.
Yeah,
is the people I know for whom it's miraculous are people who they've done all the cognitive work, or not all of it, but they're very cognitively focused and they have a head start on that stuff. But they're much less emotionally aware and much less relationally aware. And so if they download a bunch of authentic relating and a bunch of IFS memes and plug them into their already sophisticated, self-reflective view of the world, which is heavily narrative focused, they will probably come to a nice balance.
Interesting.
But no, I get irritated by that as well. Like, I wrote something about this. I don't know if I wrote a blog post about somatic releases and somatic work and somatic trauma release. And that shit can be incredibly powerful and mysterious and is largely narrative free. People just go to a weird body worker and then they get a massage and then they shake uncontrollably and cry and then they feel emotionally free. That stuff's real. It's happened to me. But the fact that happens does not then mean that all healing is on the level of the somatic, or that like narrative is beside the point, or that like thinking more constructively doesn't work. But people, I don't know, people like reality to be monocausal, and they like it when the therapy that they do is like the answer to all of life's problems, and they like it when
they sure do.
They like having the zeal of a new convert.
Yes, there's a lot of that.
It's like one thing I've noticed in my work is no matter how much I write, like, I'm just one guy, this is what worked for me, no matter how much I write, like, distancing and ironic statements indicating that I don't view myself as someone who has the answer. I get emails from people who approach me as a person who has the answer, like, frequently. And
sure.
Like, people just have that mind shape, especially when they're in their like late teens and early 20s.
For sure.
It's part of the cycle of maturity is that we look for exemplars and grip onto them too tightly.
Sure. Yeah, I'm realizing there are some questions coming through in the chat. And by the way, please ask us questions that'll, make this more interesting and, hopefully engaging for you all too. So there was the first question I'm scrolling back to. Do you think that meditation or some spirituality do you think that through meditation or some spirituality you can experience the most intense joy that is not a response to any achievement of a goal, but just being? That seems to me contrary to human nature.
Yeah, I think you can experience that. I mean, I've experienced like that. Anyone who's done a fair amount of meditation from an emotionally healthy place has experienced wild bliss and joy that has nothing to do with anything that's going on outside of your own head, and just like gratitude for the basic fact of being.
Sorry, go on. I think last time I was called out for interrupting you too much, so I'm trying to.
You can interrupt me. I like
incorporate that feedback, but it's good feedback. I guess
I like interrupted conversations more than monologue-y conversations. I'm an East Coast talker, so I talk a lot, but I expect to be interrupted.
Same. Okay. Then I can lean into my tendencies. Yeah. Oh shoot. And of course, having said so when you were just saying, like experiences that have nothing to do with the outside world. They kind of gratitude for being. Like, what is it gratitude for? And what is being? Unless it's like here in this, like it would be a different quality of experience if you were being tortured in a concentration camp, I imagine.
Right. I'm a little fast and loose. I mean, I don't know, like, I think the kind of cosmic impersonal joy that people talk about experiencing when they have kids, which is the sense of like, oh, like I'm not that important and that is the best thing in the universe. If there's something like greater than me that by sheer luck I seem to have been given the ability to participate in. And that has something to do with what's going on, but it doesn't require you.
I sure hope it does. Yeah. I mean, it's also like there's a version of that narrative that I often hear that's like deliberately impersonal. Like, and there's a bit of this in what you were just saying, where like it's not about me at all. It's something greater than me. I happen to be lucky enough to participate. Where you would suppose, like, if any two babies just happened to get plopped, I don't know why two, because I have two now. If any baby happened to get plopped down on your doorstep, you would be so thrilled to get to now care for them and nurture them. And then if they got exchanged for another baby at any point down the line, oh, great, I still get to take charge. But like, it's this child and it's what I'm learning about this child that I get to help shape and who shapes me every day. Like,
you're allergic to the part of my description that seems to point to the completely impersonal nature of it. Like, it has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it has everything to do with me and the way I experience
it. Like, if you look at, I don't know, the structure of Christian spiritual revelation, it's something like the discovery that God loves you and is working through you in all of your sin and frailty and hoping to turn it towards the greater good. There can be both the element of like the deeply personal and the cosmic. I think that's the architecture of many of these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, my view on that as an atheist, as a deeply spiritual atheist, I would say, is that that's a rationalization for what is a genuine spiritual experience. It's a kind of like dilution of the full meaning of the worldly, personal creation of value and shared flourishing that we get to do on this earth. And I don't think it should need, in fact, I think it suffers the dilution of being kind of like requiring this otherworldly gloss. That's my view. And at least there's some fault lines that we can disagree on.
Yeah, probably. But
but maybe, bridge too far to resolve in the remaining 18 minutes that we've allotted here.
Yeah.
There are also more questions. Yeah. Isn't it easy to get lost in the sauce to tell that group of people to just feel feelings? Which sauce? I mean, I think we agree generally that it's not a great thing to just tell that, or I guess, Sasha, you were saying like for them, it's fine, or it might be helpful.
Like I think there are. So one thing there's this great Derek Sivers phrase, overcorrect to correct. And I think like people have default personality structures and default like motivational mechanisms that are so strong that if they adopt the complete opposite of their default inclination, they typically arrive at some sort of middle point. And Silicon Valley overachieving cerebral people, let's say of Enneagram types 1, 3, and 5, are so optimizing and so self-conscious and so cerebral that if you tell them like, just focus on the heart, feel all of your feelings, just give up control and everything will be fine, and they adopt that as a maxim, they are not going to be able to completely overwrite their default tendencies, and they will probably arrive at somewhere pretty sane, right?
Well, I mean, so what I see happening is that they end up fractured in a different way.
Interesting.
I don't see it as, oh, wow, okay,
they pathologize their default personality and say,
now they have a new thing to ruminate and self-criticize about, and to be down on themselves for, and a new way to be disintegrated. Whereas what I see as the actual path toward, optimal health for them is, let's understand why you love this part of your work and you hate this part. And let's actually then put the words to it that then allow you to use your rational powers, which, are considerable, but which aren't very well developed within the realm of the, the soul and within the realm of values and, and emotions. Like, let's actually learn how to reason about those things, because you don't know how to reason about them. You don't know how to data gather when it comes to your own reactions and your own, choices and preferences. And so, like, that's a whole skill set in its own right that you've got to bring online and that you need to integrate with and connect up to all the more, external facing rational thinking that you already do in order for either to be fully
I think this is
objective.
something I totally agree with. Like, I do coaching work as well, as you know, and I think, like, if asked for a definition of mental health in session, typically what I say is, like, you have like an elephant in a rider, right? The elephant is your whole massive, this is a Jonathan Haidt metaphor, but your elephant is the whole mass of like subconscious drives and appetites that you have very, very little control over. And your rider is the PR department and attempts at top-down control. And ideally, you were looking at a high level of elephant rider cooperation, where everyone's kind of on the same team and everyone has mutual visibility. Like, that is an uncommon level of mental health, I would say. And that's not about saying, well, the rider should just give up and let the elephant do whatever. Or even the rider should feel bad about their desires and yield to whatever the elephant wants.
Yeah, I
The
mean, I
rider's
think,
still a part of you.
yeah, I think part of where I go maybe like a step for, or I would say big conceptual step further with that, or maybe beyond that metaphor, is that like I see the elephant
I
as
love the one-upmanship.
well, how's that for, yeah, I can do you one better. That different. I see us as the builders of the elephant ultimately. Like, we're the ones who shape it, we're the ones who can reshape it. We are self-programming, if you will, right? Like, we populate our own subconscious. It's the like garbage in, garbage out metaphor, I would say, applied to us before it ever applied to, computers or LLMs. And so I see it less as like, okay, let's learn to just talk to them. I mean, definitely an important aspect of it is like, learn to notice what, your elephant is up to and why, learn to dialogue with but also like, who do you want your elephant to be? Who do you want who do you want to be? Because it's all one you ultimately. And what do you want to be practicing, and what narrative do you want to be feeding? The two wolves that um originate from that little allegory, the grandfather and the little boy, and we all have to, and which one do you feed?
Yeah.
Like, what part of you do you want to be feeding?
I think I'm ongoingly confused about to what extent the elephant part of us is actually programmable. And I don't think that's something that, like, I don't think there's a quantifiable answer there that makes any sense. I think that, like, my observation of people tells me that there are some features of our personality structure, like our deepest appetites and what we're most compulsive about, that are just fixed, and some amount of like accepting or learning what those drives are and like working within them has to be done. I think some amount of it definitely is programmable.
Yeah, I mean, so
I'm just not sure. Like,
I mean, I think I broadly agree that there are both kinds, that there are both parts of us.
Yeah.
To reuse that word, non-technically.
Yeah.
I wrote a piece for Every some time ago called "In Defense of Radical Self-Betterment," where I kind of make my own case for just like how programmable we are, and I give examples from patients and that. But I think like I also see it as a very important exercise in understanding what is our first nature, so that so we can build our second nature out of it and on top of it. So yeah, I certainly think like, there are certain things that are temperamental, certain things that even if maybe at 5 years old, they could have gone either way, like they are canalized now. So for all intents and purposes, it would just be you can say this of height, right? Like, if we really wanted to make a project of making ourselves 2 inches taller, like there are surgeries and there are like elongation device, like it would be a completely pointless waste of life to spend our efforts that way, right? But like, if that's really what if for some reason our joy depends on it, and I think it's like that with a lot of other parts of our psychology, like, well, sexual orientation, like, for all intents and purposes, let's go ahead and call that fixed. Introversion, my husband learned to be, as he puts it, a philosophical extrovert. And like, they're clearly still like introvert, stylings to him. And he's way more genuinely engaged and energized by the kinds of conversations he's taught himself to enjoy and to seek out than a lot of people who would call themselves extroverts or score higher on an extroversion scale. So I could give a lot of examples like that.
Yeah. I think there's something to that, right? I think here is where, like, for me, the Enneagram is so like profound, and like good personality typing systems are so profound, because I think, like, if you look at the trajectory of my life, I am more plastic than something like 98% of people. Like, a number of lateral moves I've made in my life and deliberate changes to my personality structure.
Yeah.
But there is kind of one coping mechanism that's been really shaping to my life that I've reached for over and over and over and over again, and still reach for. I think I think one thing we keep circling around without directly naming it is like an important, I think, dialectic in behavioral change, right? And the dialectic is between understanding your fixed attributes and making peace with them, and holding the possibility of change.
Yes.
I think, like, if you like either approach will totally wreck you, right? If you're like, oh, I'm a self-critical overachiever, and now I need to abandon that and just jump into the project of just feeling my feelings all the time, like, that's not realistic. Yeah. Neither is it to say I'm just emotionally unintelligent and I'm going to be a self-critical overachiever for my whole life.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's a slight difference in the teleology of how we would approach this, where for me, like, the question that I'm grappling with or helping a client grapple with isn't so much like, it's almost like, okay, so how changeable is this? Although that clearly, like, that matters and it's an important input to the equation of like, do I want to work on this? Right. Yeah. But the question is much more like, what do I stand to gain? And oftentimes what turns out to be a more important object of acceptance is like, this isn't worth it to me, all things considered. Yeah, sure. I could probably work on my temper to the point where, or I could become a person with equanimity. But like, here's the kind of work that would involve, and here's what it would come at the cost of. Like, no, I want to focus on building an amazing company that makes, that like makes all of our devices more beautiful. Or, I want to work on getting us into space, whatever the case may be. Like, I actually care about that more, and I don't care if I have this flaw.
You're defending the point that there are some things that are worth more than some aspirational amount of emotional regulation.
Or any sort of aspect of ourselves broadly. Just as, like, this house isn't like my platonic form of the perfect house, or, like, Austin is not the platonic form of my favorite city. There are real trade-offs. I miss New York, but like, this is where we get to raise our kids, and there's a billion reasons why that makes our life and our parenting and our kids' upbringing better. And so I'm choosing it, even though, like, there are trade-offs involved. And we can reason in the same way about ourselves. And again, like, if we think of ourselves as our ultimate building project, like, do I want another deck here, or is that not worth the cost?
I think that's totally right. And this is a place where, again, I think not only do we agree, but we agree to a degree that might surprise you. Like,
go figure.
I get a little mad when people seem to think that, like, the highest priority in life should be to, like, just not coerce yourself and
right. Like this internal facing thing.
Yeah, like, never have any shoulds or top down control, and like, all of the things in life that have given me the most meaning have required a little bit of commitment of that shape. Like, I've now, like, written one book myself, and I'm half of, like, the crew of a second book,
which I can't wait to read.
I'm like, both books, like, books are generally negative mental health events for the people doing them. While they feel it's really hard.
Living it.
If I always did what I wanted to do and never engaged in any studying or top down control, there would be too fewer books in the world. And those experiences have given me so much meaning and purpose.
I mean, what I would argue, like, meaning and purpose are at least as, if not more important to even just like our mental health and flourishing than non-coercion, non-shooting, etc., and what that sort of like indexes. So even just from that standpoint, like, my flourishing is on whole massively increased by torturing myself through this book which I'm very literally experiencing all the pains of right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that like shoulding and self-coercion is necessarily or even mostly bad, then you're missing duty and sacrifice as important elements of the human experience. And like, if you're missing those elements, you don't understand the human experience of many, many people.
Interesting. I would, as it happens, I would neither use the word duty nor sacrifice, but I think that's less of an interesting and more of a probably rhetorical difference.
Yeah. I like how particular you are about terminology.
I am very particular, but for reasons. There are reasons.
Yeah, you don't want to accept the wrong concept shapes into people's heads.
Yeah, because I actually, I think there's something extremely toxic about equating discipline and like chosen commitments and goals with duties and with what has historically passed for and been actually meant by duty and sacrifice, where like it's not about you, it's not about your life, it's very much set by some higher and inherently impersonal standard that then beats you up until you comply with it, and that mainly motivates you through guilt and fear, like interjected fear.
Yeah.
And I don't think we actually need that at all, but I do think that we need discipline and commitment to long-term goals that are meaningful for us.
A lot of what this comes back to also is the extent to which advice writ large is so often biographical.
Oh, yes.
Like, I'm a person where my personality structure defaults to fun and novelty seeking. And if I just like felt my feelings all the time and didn't think about duty or sacrifice, I would just like live a life of fun excess that didn't go anywhere. And like, you might be a person or your clients might be people where they default towards um, excessive top-down control and being excessively self-critical. And so,
interesting.
Yeah, I think when you're evaluating a spiritual leader or a therapist or a coach or a point of view, it's important to ask, like, where does this come from biographically? And like,
I mean, for sure,
who's advocating this thing, are they advocating it as a response to a default set of tendencies that I just don't have?
Yeah, although I do think there's an overarching framework. So, I might ultimately be like in the group of practitioners you would criticize, in that I do think like there are certain universals. However, I'm also very sensitive to, if I define those universals at too concrete a level, then I'm making precisely the kind of mistake that you're talking about, where now I'm taking my me search and universalizing it to every human being. I think like at the level of universals are things like, well, we have agency, but also things like think for yourself and don't let some guru dictate how your life should go. Like, that is a universal in my mind. That is a principle that I don't think any human can actually do well without. Maybe they don't ever need it stated explicitly because maybe they've just been on that premise implicitly. But even for those people, I think it helps to have it explicit because they can actually be more consistent with it.
Yeah. I mean, I want to be annoying and argue with you. And my annoying argument with you is that,
please,
I do think that it is just a natural part of human development to lionize certain figures, overfit to their example, make your personality a patchwork of imitation, and then notice the limits to that strategy eventually. Like, I don't think there's a way to short circuit that.
Interesting.
Another way of putting it is like, I don't think adolescents generally can or should think spin for themselves.
Oh, that's interesting. So that doesn't follow, because I think you can look to role models, you can make your personality, out of a patchwork, and you can do that in a way that is actually getting processed actively through your own.
Have some amount of critical distance even while you're doing that.
Or I don't even know if I would call it distance, like have some amount of critical engagement. Like, this, I actually processed this and I decided I liked it. And this I decided I didn't like. And ideally, maybe I could even name a reason or two that were genuine and honest and not just bullshit, post hoc rationalizations. Like, yes, I like this person. I'm going to emulate this person because I like these things about them and I want to see what that's like. Or like when you do pastiches in English class to learn to like try out a style, but you know that's what you're doing, and you know that in the end you're responsible for sort of picking and choosing what resonates with you. So I don't see that as not independent thinking.
Right.
But there's a version of it that's not.
I'm curious to see how this works out with your children.
I mean, so far they've had no shortage of independent thinking as directed at anything we tell them.
Perhaps a little too much.
I mean, I am committed to the view that there's no such thing as too much. So now I have to live out my principles for better or worse. And see, okay, no, so far so good. Sorry.
Enjoy living your truth over there.
I will, thank you very much. Just fine.
No, you will. I know you will.
As my kids, throw their shoes at me. No, I'm kidding. I mean, but the thing about my kids is they are also like somewhat subject to rational persuasion in their independent mindedness. And so like, if they throw shoes at me or say at each other, then there are reasons I can give them as to why that's not ultimately going to serve their needs. Like, I don't actually want to be in the room with you if you throw shoes at me. And, your brother's not going to actually want to play with you anymore. Anyway, but this is going down.
Rather far afield. Should we take a question or two?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm just looking through. So much advice these days is about eliminating thoughts and removing labels to reach peace or self-discovery. But what about adding a flow-inducing, intrinsically motivated activity? In this age of meditation, the positive pursuit of joy feels underrated.
That could be true. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
If that seems true to you, it's probably true of your situation. People's information diets vary to a great degree, right?
For sure.
In my view, the kind of meditation that's benefited me still seems somewhat underpromoted, but it's not like it's the right thing for everybody.
My husband has introduced me to this it's a cone, or at least like it was published on a page of like cones that have like little vignettes, but it's the one that's gone around on Twitter that goes and in fact, like this student says to his teacher, "I'm so frustrated. Everyone seems to be reaching enlightenment. Why can't I reach enlightenment? What am I missing?" And the teacher goes through this whole spiel of how you can't really get there through words, and so we try all these different methods to kind of like get the experience inside of you and promote it. And he goes through this whole spiel of trying to kind of explain it and gesture at it, and then the student says, "Okay, I'm enlightened." Like that's what he needed. and for my husband, I don't even know if we're interpreting it right, but my husband's take on it is like my husband's never been tempted by meditation or mindfulness or any of my therapeutic tools that he's also probably the happiest person I know. Certainly one of the very top happiest, and like in the thickest, most robust sense of happy. And I genuinely don't think he would actually get that much incremental benefit from most of those tools. But I think that's because he's already doing a lot of it. Like he is extremely mindful. He is, he's way better than me at just like noticing the contours of any given present moment situation and like kind of integrating them as he goes.
Yeah, I mean, one way to characterize people like me with a spiritual inclination is that we're people who are especially poorly adjusted. We're so poorly adjusted that the function that comes with the human consciousness doesn't satisfy us, and we're so pained by this that we need to spend thousands of hours meditating and studying spirituality in order to swap over to a radically different reward function, and then hopefully the after picture looks like us just being fairly functional adults. That like great bacon sauce.
That's funny. I mean, I think that might be sort of his view. I'm not going to say one way or another, to what extent I agree with it, because I mean, I do think that it's giving short shrift to some of the really incredible positive benefits of a lot of those practices. And I do think that not everybody needs to do them, and not everybody needs the same amount of time or investment or technical mastery in them, in order to live a really fulfilling, happy life. But I think we agree on that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the perspective I write from is like, I'm kind of a poorly adjusted misfit who managed to make himself annoyingly happy. But if I were just like annoyingly happy to begin with,
like my husband.
Yeah, like your husband. Like, congratulations
Very
to your
much.
husband. I'm not about to tell your husband that he's doing everything wrong.
I mean, you're welcome to, and
I
he
wouldn't.
won't be bothered.
It's good to know that I
He's like, okay, you do you. Go right on tweeting about education. It's very time. Okay, sorry. So are there more searching for disagreement? Look, we've tried. Is it fair to encompass this combo so far as just wanting to feel good things as consistently as possible? I'm curious how that may be inaccurate. What do you
I
think,
don't even know how
Sasha?
to parse that question.
I'm not sure. Is it fair to encompass this conversation as just wanting to feel good things? That's not how I would characterize it, because I don't think it's just about, like, I'm certainly not trying to optimize for hedonic pleasure of the form you can get in a little brain in a vat, hedonic machine. I'm
Yeah,
talking
I
about
think you and I are both alike in that we're trying to optimize for living a rich human experience, and that includes some amount of multipolarity in terms of values.
yeah. Okay, well, that's not where our disagreement is going to come from. So moving along. Thank you for is it Attic for linking us to the Sasha article. Or no, sorry, the Derek Sivers article that Sasha referred to. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll check it out. Okay, I think mysticism dilutes the true joy that is real and tangible on Earth. Anything amazing happens, and people attribute it to another realm rather than evidence evidence of the possibilities of how truly amazing this reality, this world can be. This is kind of probably preaching to my choir. I don't think there's a question in it, but I like it.
It's funny though, because there's sort of this idea of the perennial philosophy, which is that people who do a lot of meditation or a lot of prayer or something tend to come away with a pretty similar point of view, which is this, like, God is a word we use to devotionally refer to the deep mystery of existence and every single thing in it. So it's sort of like the same perspective, is that, like, the divine, rather than being some sort of separate realm that we don't have access to, that gets credit for all of the stuff that's going on. That's not the point of view. The point of view is, like, the divine is the stuff right here, right now. When you have eyes to see it. So I think, like, it's funny, you're like, mysticism is bullshit, and then you appear to have the mystical point of view.
Yeah, so this is where, I think this is where we actually genuinely do have some real disagreement, which is fun on the whole point. But I think at least, like, my sense of how people who are religious or mystical or kind of under any of the headings you're describing, how they conceptualize and understand and refer to mystical experience, I don't think it actually integrates into this world and the agency we have in understanding it and living it in the way you're describing. Like, I think it genuinely is a kind of cop out to incomprehensibility and a cop out to ineffability in a way that I think is just a failure of imagination. Like, look at great poetry that puts words to, and look at the scientific explanations that have actually helped us to grasp what used to be these unfathomable aspects of the universe. And why should we think that we can't continue to increase our understanding? And why should that diminish the beauty and the meaning? And,
I wonder,
the holiness of it.
have you, and I don't mean this in a belittling way, have you actually read, like, lots of accounts of mystical experience and mystical takes on
Lots.
religion?
Define lots.
I don't know, more than a half dozen.
I mean, probably around the half dozen. Maybe 15, 20. I don't know. I haven't kept track, but
So
I would say,
in my understanding, religiosity in general is characterized by a fascinating split between what I would say are two branches of religiosity. There's what I would call, like, the replicator perspective, which is the perspective, the branch of religiosity that's focused on a set of rules that decide how we should live and what's okay to ask about and what's not okay to ask about. There's like a replicator or civilizational branch, and then there's the mystical branch. And over and over again, the mystical branch seems to arrive at a relatively stable point of view, like across different religious traditions that have practitioners who do a lot of meditation or prayer or whatever. And the point of view is something like, that's God, that's God, that's God, explanations are God, understanding is God, agency is God, surrender is God. Each is
But
all the same thing.
then what? Then why have a word?
Well, I mean, Jews forbid it. They just say G-D because they don't
Okay,
want to
why
make the
have a
thing too concrete.
why have a forbidden word?
Because
Why forbid
there
it?
is a devotional attitude to the very fact of being alive that is itself something. Um, mm, it's like an alternative to the default of just being like, yeah, let me get on with my life and solve my problem.
Yeah. So I think I'm better off specifically along the dimension of having a really devotional attitude of imbuing meaning and spiritual import of like deeply caring for and experiencing the kind of holiness of the things that I love and of the things in this world that bring me joy, of which there are many, and the things and the people and the ideas and the projects, et cetera, et cetera. I think I do a better job of that than when I had religious like currents in me growing up. And partly I think I do a better job because I'm not bifurcated and kind of like needing to find like this needs to somehow instance this like holier thing that needs to somehow both come prior to and in some way like lend justification and lend import to the Statue of Liberty and all of my reasons for loving it, and that I, glory in the fact that we've figured out how to set up a society where we're mostly actually free,
So you say that to
that
you,
welcomes immigrants.
that the immanent and the transcendent are perfectly united. There doesn't need to be a division between them.
Yeah, and not only does there not need to be, but I would say it's toxic and dangerous and accounts for many of the evils and many of the failures of humanity to date that we've bifurcated them.
That to me is kind of is the mystical perspective. In
Wait,
in late Buddhism, this is referred to as the unity of samsara and nirvana.
interesting. I mean, obviously, I would need to read up on it more.
Yeah. I think again, this is just like us having similar views, but coming from different cultural angles. Where you're like, religiosity is the thing that stopped me from noticing the fact that divine and mundane are the same. And I'm like,
but I think here's part of it,
helped me notice that.
So here's part, like, not everything is divine. In fact, few things relative to all the stuff around me is divine. So there's a very real difference there, I suspect, where again, like that personal aspect, and where like most people, to the extent that I, see them as like kind of having given way to their passive defaults and being kind of automaton, being copies of everybody around them who aren't about much, who aren't really like building their own life. Like, I don't feel that much of a kind of pull of, love and holiness in their direction. I kind of, I respect their right to live and to do their thing. I'm not going to interfere, but like, meh, or when I see
partiality towards ambitious,
I'm partial
people, and there's something holier to you about those than like the default stuff.
Yeah. And same, I'm partial about like what human made artifacts I actually, find to be beautiful and competently and thoughtfully designed, and I love those more, and they are holier to me than crappy, mediocre products that mostly, have just kind of spread by hype or whatever the case may be. Or I mean,
I too am partial. I mean, if I wasn't, I don't know how I could organize my life. I think, like, in my experience, contemplative activity can give you a lens on life of as close to impartial love as human beings are capable of. Kind of like a grand paternal accepting love. I'm just seeing the thing as it is, and I love it for being what it is. And it also gives you some amount of fluidity across lenses, where you can put down that lens and pick up a lens of like, I'm goal oriented. I like certain things more than others. But I don't know. That's like an experiential point more than something I can philosophically defend or care to philosophically defend.
And I picked up another question. So, what's a book behind you. Oh, behind you, as in like, because we both literally have books behind us. I was thinking like, in our historical development. But this is a good. It's a more specific thing that you'd recommend to others for a reason that you pick. You go first, Sasha. I have to prove
Mine's even on my shelf.
behind me. And then after this, we might have to wrap up because I know I've got a hard stop in 15 minutes. It's been so fun. Good. I think we actually did get through the questions though after this one. And there's some good comments as well.
I don't know, man. I don't really have universal book recommendations. Is that how I?
Okay. Well, we can assume that they're going to be like person specific. Like you can even, if you want, you can specify like if you're such and such a type,
Right.
you might enjoy
the topic of this discussion has been a lot about reconciling when should we work on shit and when should we surrender to experience. There's two basic points of view. And I think the book I have read on that specific topic of like reconciling those points of view that is most valuable to me is Already Free by Bruce Tift. I think it's in my bedroom, not the office, so I'm cheating. But to talk about how the therapy perspective of we can work on stuff and heal and change ourselves, and the Buddhist perspective of we can just give up and enjoy life as it is, are irreconcilable but can nevertheless operate in tension.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Oh my gosh, what am I going to pick? Let's see. What is in view? I feel like I want some natural like delimitation on this because otherwise it's just too hard. Or too obvious. There's Atlas Shrugged up there. Yeah, it kind of feels like a cop out because, well, sure, obviously, that has been a major influence. Maybe it's not that obvious though. Yeah, I mean, Atlas Shrugged up there. I recommend if you haven't already read it, or if you have preconceived notions about it, or about Rand, or if you're looking for a radically different but also secularly spiritual philosophy of life and a kind of image of human ideal, or if you like really like dramatic action-packed plots that also include some philosophizing and long speeches. For any number of reasons, you would probably enjoy Atlas Shrugged if you haven't already read it. And we might find some things to disagree about on its basis. Sasha, I don't know. Have you read?
No. It's like a get around to it someday book for me. So maybe I will get around to it a little sooner as a result of this.
Cool. Well, maybe we can read each other's recommended books and then have a proper debate about points of agreement.
I somehow don't think it's going to happen for
No, I don't know. I have hopes for us.
Okay, cool.
We're just so agreeable.
Maybe we will finally become enemies if you child enough.
We're friends who agree to disagree. Even that feels like
it's a high bar.
High hill to climb.
Yeah. Cool. Nice to see you.
This was so fun. Thanks you, Sasha. Always a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and offering your perspectives.
Bye.
Till next time.
Till next time.